Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Friday, May 22nd, 2020. I am Andrew Hanson, joined once again by Santino Caccone as we continue our 32-day virtual tour of the NFL from a DFS perspective. And I told you all a few shows back about Santino's 4.4 speed, but he can also bring the power. And this is a power rushing game podcast. We've got Derrick Henry and the the Tennessee Titans today. Santino, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Power is the name of the game with this team up front, and with the big guy Derrick Henry leading the charge. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it really is. He was the monster that carried them all the way almost to the Super Bowl. Just an absolute beast in the regular season. Led the NFL in rushing. Ended up with 1,540 yards, 303 carries. He led the NFL in rushing attempts and also rushing touchdowns, which was nice that they finally gave him the rock. It was Dion Lewis there for a while, but he's left town now, and it's all Derrick Henry all the time.
Yeah, it was kind of a theme the last couple of years of, are we going to give Henry the ball more? Are we going to give Henry the ball more? Are we going to give Henry the ball more? It started in 2018. He saw an uptick, about 240 plus carries. And then last year, it was pretty much all him, and they pushed Dion Lewis to the side, and they were this close to making the Super Bowl. So it worked out for them.
Yeah, really, really impressive run through the playoffs, winning in New England, Tom Brady's last game in Gillette, and then big upset against the Ravens, and then they had that lead against the Chiefs, but they couldn't finish it off. So a lot to build on, and things are looking up for the Titans. So thank you all for joining us here. Before we start breaking it down, just a little introduction. If you're new to the program, you can find these podcasts anywhere podcasts can be found, and we're also doing these by video now on YouTube. And again, we're doing these 7 days a week. So thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn more, we have some information at DFSCoachTalk.com. That's our website. You can pick up a weekly, monthly, or annual membership. And those are frozen right now until we get a pro sport back up and running in the U.S. In the meantime, we're giving out free advice in the Korea Baseball Organization, the KBO. We had another big night yesterday at DFS Coach Talk with the cash games and the GPP. So encourage everybody to come and become a member and have some fun with us with the KBO. So Santino, the coaching staff is once again led by Mike Vrabel, and he's got the same offensive coordinator back, Arthur Smith. On the defensive side, Dean Pease has retired, and Mike Vrabel has announced that he's going to basically run the committee, and it'll be everyone giving input. He'll have final decisions on the play calling, but the core is basically intact there. And on the offensive side, as we mentioned in the intro, it was all about the rushing attack. Over 2,000 yards, third in the league as a team, 5 yards a carry, thanks to Mr. Henry. Thank you very much, Derrick. 21 scores on the ground. That was second in the league. And passing, it was the story of the transition from Mariota to Tannehill. They started off very poorly with Mariota, but then when Tannehill took over, they were much better in the passing game, and it became a much more balanced attack offensively. What do you see as the outlook for the offense this fall?
Yeah, I mean, two things that they did are they lost two starting linemen from last year, Kevin Panfile at right guard, and probably their best lineman overall, or tied with Taylor Lewan. They lost Jack Conklin at right tackle. They did address that in the first round of the draft, so that might be okay there, but we'll see how it happens. But yeah, this team, first 4 or 5 games of the season were not good. They had a losing record. Passing offense was bad, but then Mr. Tannehill, I know him very well, and I really like Tannehill. He came in and he just turned this team right around. Listen to these 3 stats for their passing offense, which they were ninth in the league in touchdown passes, which for a team that was 31st in attempts, they were very successful in the red zone and in the green zone, as you say, when the 20 to 40 yard line. But they were first in the league in yards per attempt and passing, first in the league in air yards per attempt and passing, and second in yards per catch. So this team was not afraid to throw the ball deep. And it makes sense when you have Derrick Henry back there, power running game. Play action was the name of the game for this team, and you could get single coverage and beat people downfield when they are trying to load the box against Derrick Henry, because you kind of need to.
Yeah, great stats there. And the key on the yards per attempt was that transition from Mariota to Tannehill. Mariota was only 7.5 yards per attempt, and then Tannehill was 9.6 YPA, which is tremendous. Now, the number that surprised me there was the air yards. I didn't realize that that the Titans were so high in that category. I guess A.J. Brown was really the deep threat. He had 20.2 yards per reception.
Yeah, which is insane especially for a rookie.
Yeah, so that was terrific. Thankfully, because Corey Davis was subpar at best. But it was Arthur Smith's first year as the offensive coordinator. He had taken over from Matt LaFleur, and you're right, they were really effective at actually punching it in the end zone, and that goes a long way towards winning games and getting deep in the playoffs. That was really huge.
And for a team that was such a power run team, when I say that they were fourth in the league in yards per play at 6 per 1, I don't think you would have put the Titans up there in the top 5 at yards per play. If you probably would have guessed 15 teams before them, but they were just extreme. They were the most effective team on offense. Probably once Ryan Tannehill came in, they were just extremely efficient on offense, and it was the entire offense.
Yeah, you're right. You wouldn't think of them that way. You'd think of the 3 yards in the dust, just power running game. But Derrick Henry, he drags people a couple extra yards, over 5 yards to carry himself, and that's how you get over 6 yards per play. So the Titans certainly have to feel good about the offense. On the defensive side, last year was a bit of a down year under Dean Pease. The passing defense dropped a little bit. They were 24th in yardage allowed, and they were sort of middle of the pack against the run. What are your thoughts on the defensive side?
So the defense got shaken up a little bit as well. The two biggest guys that they lost were Jarrell Casey at defensive line. They replaced him with Jack Crawford. It's not an even trade right there, a trade off. But they also lost Logan Ryan, their other starting cornerback. I know they have Malcolm Butler, but Logan Ryan was extremely good, and he's currently a free agent right now. I know before we went on, we thought would the Titans re-sign him, but I just don't see him fitting into their payroll, especially since they're going to have to pay Derrick Henry soon. But yeah, I don't know if they'll be able to pay Logan Ryan $10 million a year, so that's a big loss. They lost Cameron Wake, another guy from the Dolphins, but he's kind of near the end of his career anyway, and they replaced him with Vic Beasley. They did add Jonathan Joseph at corner, another guy whose history is really good. He's a really good corner, but he's up there in age, and he's been getting roasted a lot. So I don't know if that's a fair replacement for him. But this defense, they were really good. They were pretty good last year, but against the pass, they weren't so much. Malcolm Butler is a shutdown corner. Kenny Vaccaro has been pretty good, but they didn't have. They gave up a lot of teams were passing a lot against them. They gave up a lot of yards, but the one good thing about them is, on the flip side, on the offense, they were very successful in the red zone and punching it in. On defense, they were a kind of bend it but don't break defense, and they didn't give up that many touchdowns, which is why they held the leads a lot.
Yeah, they ended up outscoring their opponents by almost 70 points. So pretty strong in the point differential. And they were +6 on turnovers as well, which was big. And then in terms of the secondary, they went out and drafted Christian Fulton from LSU in the second round. So maybe he'll help if they don't re-sign Logan Ryan.
Yeah, I mean they have Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson already. They did pick up Jonathan Joseph, and Holton might be pretty good as well. So that's a decent top four. One thing that I saw that was interesting is they were bottom 10 in the leagues in knockdown percentage for quarterbacks and hurry percentage for the quarterback. And one thing that hopefully gets fixed this year, they were second in the league in penalties on defense. At 100, had 125 defensive penalties, which was seventh in penalty yardage. You got to figure if they're a little more, if they don't have as many penalties, they're more disciplined. That takes up a lot of first downs because they did have the sixth most plays ran against them. So the more less time they're on the field, the more first downs they're not giving up themselves, the better numbers that they should probably put up.
Yeah, doing some quick math here. That's 8 penalties a game on the defensive side. That's 2 per quarter, which is not good.
No,
And
no.
I had noticed that disparity in plays as well. So that's certainly one of the explanations for it. Now, one other thing I want to mention on the defensive side is that they've hired Jim Haslett as their inside linebackers coach. And he, of course, is a veteran in the league. He's been a defensive coordinator in 4 different places. So he's one more veteran that I think Mike Vrabel will turn to and try to fix some of those deficiencies that you just outlined.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, Santino, let's start to break down the offense as we look to 2020. And you know Ryan Tannehill better than almost everyone out there. So, talk to me about your boy. He's no longer in Miami, but he's done quite well in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm glad that he had this year that he had in his first year out of Miami. He'll be 32 in July, so he's not a young chicken anymore. But this is the first time he was a Pro Bowler. Uh, awesome, kudos to him, and I'm glad it happened. He was, yeah, he needed this. He needed this, but he took over after week six. Through week six at the end of week six, he came in after Mariota got the hook and then never came back because Tannehill looked like he was moving the offense, even though they didn't score that game. But he started 10 games and went 7-3. He's been pretty good throughout his career. He's gotten the Dolphins to the playoffs. He's pretty much a 500 win type of guy, but this team is a lot better than and the weapons that he has are a lot better than he had in Miami. But let's look, a 70.3% completion percentage. That's insane. He was third in the third in the league on target percentages. The only two people ahead of him were Drew Brees and Derek Carr. And same with bad throw percentage and drop percentage. The only two people that had a better bad throw percentage or drop percentage than him were Derek Carr and Drew Brees. So he was elite in getting the ball into the playmakers' hands. And they weren't just the dink and dunk type of Derek Carr throws because they led the league in air yards, they led the league in yards per catch and all that. But he had 2,742 yards in his 10 and a quarter games, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, something that he's always done. He doesn't turn the ball over too much. And then he added 43 carries for 212 yards and a career high 4 touchdowns on the ground. He does have the ability to scramble. He's always had the ability to run, and he's a mobile quarterback. Maybe 4 touchdowns. I don't know if he'll repeat that. So a little regression there, but 212 yards, I can easily see him getting another 200 yards on the ground. And this is a big one, 117.5 QB rating, career high. He was just really, really efficient, as was this whole team. And for DraftKings and fantasy, 2 out of 10 times only 2 times he was under 19 fantasy points. So he was very consistent. 2 times over 30. So he's not a high ceiling guy, but he's a very consistent low ceiling guy. And for FanDuel, 3 times under 19 points, with that other one being 18.9. So pretty much right there. And he only had 1 over 30, but he's just extremely consistent. He's a better than average game manager who is efficient in the red zone. But one thing that this team, I will say, is they were so efficient last year. It's going to be extremely hard to match the efficiency that they had. So I could see a little bit of touchdown regression, but the big plays are there with this team.
Yeah, excellent. And I think for Titans fans, they have to be excited that the Marcus Mariota experiment is over. You know, it kind of crashed with, what was it, 59% completion percentage last year as he got the team off to that 2-4 start. And Tannehill really came to the rescue just in time. like you
Yeah.
said, and had that great winning record down the stretch with the better weapons around him than in Miami. And I think it's important to note that he does have value really as a cash game player on DraftKings. I looked at the prices, and out of his 10 starts, he exceeded value 8 times, better than 3x. So that's a tremendous ratio. He was in that 4.8 to 6.8 price range. So we'll have to see what his price tag is this year. But yeah, you're right. Those 4 touchdowns on the ground really helped, and he averaged 259 yards passing per start. So really solid. Um, Now, in terms of the backups, now that Mariota is gone, I just want to touch on these guys briefly. They've got Logan Woodside, who's been on the practice squad. He's out at Toledo, and in his junior and senior season there, he averaged over 4,000 yards and 36 touchdowns. So, nice background there, but no experience yet in the NFL. And then they spent their 7th-round draft pick this year on Cole McDonald out of Hawaii. So, once again, one Hawaii man out, one Hawaii man in. And Cole McDonald is an athlete. So he's got a nice profile that matches up with Tannehill because this guy can run. He's got a 4.58 40, and then he ran a 1.55 10-yard split, which was in the 99th percentile. He's also got a cannon for an arm, great on the deep ball. And last year at Hawaii, he was over 4,000 yards, 63% completions, 33 touchdowns, but 14 interceptions. And that's the one knock on him. He made some bad decisions on some of those throws. But on the good throws, I liked his tape. To me, it looked like he had that anticipation where he was looking off the secondary and getting to that second and third read in his progression. So I think he's got a real future. Once again, a nice spot for a backup to learn behind Tannehill.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to say is when you brought up Mariota, it's funny because this team has been searching for consistency from Mariota for ever since he came into the league, and he's just been the consummate inconsistent quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is the exact opposite. He might not be the greatest quarterback, but he is extremely consistent when he's in there, and he makes the right reads and he makes the right plays, and he's very good as a play action quarterback. Throughout his career, he's been efficient and excellent as or on play action. And with Derrick Henry back there and a guy who we'll get to later as a wide receiver who had an extraordinary yards per catch, I can only see him continuing to be an efficient and just very good at every week to week.
Yeah, I mean, 70% completions is just terrific. So that's a nice thing to have. Now, we started the intro with Derrick Henry, and it's time to celebrate him again. The NFL's leading rusher. Is there anything that could possibly stop him from being dominant again this year?
Injuries, as with everybody, but another guy, another first-time Pro Bowler. He finally broke through and got the carries that he desperately deserved. The end of 2018, when he was getting 200 yards back to back, and he just kept busting through and almost got the Titans back into the playoffs. They finally said, okay, we got to give him the ball and let's do it. And second year over 1,000 yards. Now Dion Lewis is gone, so maybe even more, a little bit more. But 1,540 yards in the league, 16 touchdowns. You mentioned it, 5.1 yards per carry. In 2018, he had 4.9 yards per carry. So this isn't a fluke. Just throwing out how big of a monster the guy is. He was third in first downs. He had 73 first downs. He was first in yards after contact with 968 of his 1,540. First in average yards after contact. He averaged 3.2 yards after contact. That's insane. 29 broken tackles was third. This guy is as big as he said, or as he looks. He looks that even bigger when he's running at you with a full head of steam. It's very hard to want to tackle this guy for four quarters.
Yeah, seriously, I would want no part of trying to tackle him. Just incredible. And he also had career highs with 18 receptions, 206 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which aren't big numbers, but like you said, with Dion Lewis gone, at least he's got that nice base. And you know that the team rallied around this guy. They gave him the extra carries in that finale to make sure he got the rushing title as he went for over 40 fantasy points. And we know this guy's got a major ceiling after that 99-yard touchdown 2 years ago. He can bust a long one and give you some high scoring games. Even though he doesn't catch many passes, he had 4 games over 20, 2 over 30, and that 40-point fantasy game. So an absolute stud, and he's going to get a ton of carries this year. Now, with Dion Lewis gone, they have to come up with some sort of plan for third down and a guy who's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. And it looks like it's going to be Darrington Evans, their third-round pick out of Appalachian State. He's a little bit undersized at 5'10", 203, but really, who isn't compared to Derrick Henry? And I really like the tape on Evans. This guy's fast, quick. He ran a 4.4 140. He was 150 in the 10-yard split, 97th percentile, and you can see the quickness in his tape, the lateral quickness, the vision, the moves, quick cuts. And I know the Titans are excited about his hands because in the last 2 years with over 400 carries, he had 0 fumbles and only 1 drop last year out of the backfield through the air. He ended up with 21 catches for 198, almost 6 yards a carry when he was handling it. Santino, should we expect that Evans will be that third down back, right from the beginning for the Titans?
I could see it. Again, as I mentioned yesterday, the being a rookie in this season is a little different than the last season since you're not going to have that playbook. You're not going to have the practice reps, all that off-season work that you would have with your teammates. So that's the gray area on this season. But yeah, you mentioned it. This guy's a speedster. He had really good hands. He had 5 receiving touchdowns last year and another 18 on the ground. An explosive playmaker. He could easily step into that Dion Lewis role. 37-inch vertical was really good as well. And I see him just being a change of pace back, trying to keep Derrick Henry refreshed for that fourth quarter when they have the lead and they just want to pound people with a super freak monster who's just as fast as he is strong. But Darrington Evans, I do like him if he gets the playing time. And I think maybe Henry gets a little more work on third downs as a receiver because he did pick that up, and there are no Dion Lewis, but Evans easily fits that role, and he could be a playmaker on third down.
A 37-inch vertical too, another one of your stats.
Yeah, this guy,
now,
he's a freak.
That's really about it for this backfield. The other guys on the roster right now include Dalen Dawkins, who had all of 11 carries last year, 1 target, no receptions, and then Sonoris Perry, who in his career only has 11 carries for 33 yards and 3 catches. So not much depth there at all. Very similar story with the receivers, Santino. After the departure of Tajay Sharp and another big pass catcher, Delaney Walker, of course, the tight end, those 2 guys are gone. And what's left is a very thin group of pass catchers. But thankfully, they've got A.J. Brown, who, as we've been referencing, had a terrific rookie season last year.
Yeah, and he only started 11 games. Derrick Henry probably loves this guy, probably will buy him steaks after every game because he's the reason why that you can't really stack the box the entire game against him because 20.2 yards per catch, that's just, as a rookie as well, that's insane. He had 84 targets, 52 catches, 1,051 yards. Only 25 receivers, wide receivers, got over 1,000 yards. He did it as his rookie year. That's awesome. 8 touchdowns, and he added another one rushing. This guy's just a super athletic, big guy. He is a speedster, and he breaks tackles. He was 14th in the league in yards after the catch, 14th for wide receivers and broken tackles. He only had 2 drops. That's how Tannehill didn't have many bad throws, as I mentioned earlier. He was the top 3 in the league in bad throw percentage. And this guy only had 2 drops, and he was 16th in the yards before catch per reception at 11.3. So another speed guy with who's just built at 6 foot 226 to break tackles and get yards after the catch. He's definitely the number one wide receiver on this team. If we look at the first 4 weeks last year, he was under 50% of the snaps while Mariota was in there every week. The last 7 weeks, only one time under 79% of the snaps. So there's room for him to even grow more. 4 of his 5 100-yard games happened in the last 6 weeks, and 5 of his 8 touchdowns were also in the last 6 weeks. And he also added that rushing touchdown in the last 8 weeks. So this guy's a number one option, and he might not be costing you number one money in fantasy, in FanDuel or DraftKings right out of the gate. So he's someone I want to look at.
Those late season numbers seem to correspond with some other change in the offense. Oh yeah, it was when Tannehill was playing. Yeah, so they had a nice chemistry together. And you're right on the price. I mean, he started out extremely cheap as a rookie, only 3.7K on DraftKings, but the highest he got was around 7K. So that'll change this year. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on his price tag. He's certainly going to be the number one target for Tannehill. Now, you mentioned the low number of drops, and Brown had a much better catch rate than the next fellow here we got to talk about, Corey Davis, who, man, what a disappointment. First round draft pick from 2017, 5th overall. He just hasn't done it. Last year, he played in 15 games, but he only got 43 catches, 601 yards, and 2 scores. And he had one of the weakest fantasy performances you can have for a guy that's, getting that many opportunities as a first rounder. He only had 2 games over 10 fantasy points all season. They were both over 20, so he hit value those 2 games, but that was it. It was just a mess, and I don't really have much faith in him. Do you?
I mean, I did, but like you said, the 2 games that he were his best, he scored a touchdown in both those games and had over 80 yards. Take out those 2 games, he has no touchdowns and no games over 80 yards. So it's very, if you put him in your lineup, you're just hoping that it's one of the games that maybe he catches a touchdown. And I don't know what happened, because he was supposed to be, he looked awesome in college, and his rookie year, he looked pretty good at the end of the season. And in 2018, he had nearly 900 yards and 4 touchdowns with inconsistency from Mariota. So he looked like he was going to take that next leap, and then he was going to have A.J. Brown taking off some pressure on him. But he fell flat. It's very hard to say anything good of what he did last year. He just fell flat, and watched A.J. Brown leapfrog him. I can't. He only saw 6 targets plus in 4 games. I mean, until I see it happen and stop saying, "Oh, he has talent, maybe he'll put it together," until it actually happens, I can't even look at him in fantasy or DFS. It's just gonna. He had a few games where he got 0 catches. That's just gonna crush your DFS. You can have superstars all over your lineup, and then you get a 0 from them, and it just crushes you. Oof. Yeah, it's not a good one.
I lost you there for a second, buddy. Where are we now? How far did you take us?
When did I cut out there? I don't know what's happening.
Did you wrap up with Corey Davis? Did you start on Adam Humphries?
Yeah, no, I wrapped up on Corey Davis.
All right. So let's transition to Adam Humphries, who I'm a little bit more excited about. And last year he wasn't that productive. He only hit value twice all season as well. He did deal with some injuries. He only played 12 games, finished with 37 catches for 374 and 2 touchdowns. But, rewind a year to Tampa, where he spent 4 years, and his last year there in 2018, 76 receptions for 816 and 5 touchdowns. And, this is one of the prototypical slot receiver guys underneath. He'll go and battle for an 8, 9, 10-yard catch. And I really think they need to incorporate him more in the offense. If he's going to get, 3 receptions a game like last year, then, he's not really going to be worth it. But if they've got Henry, taking up all that attention with the line, and they've got uh, AJ Brown as the deep threat. To me, it makes sense. Let's utilize this guy in those short intermediate routes. Do you think that Humphreys will get some more targets this year?
Yeah, I actually like Humphreys. He was their big offensive offseason acquisition last year. Um, Corey Davis, I don't know if it cut out for me or for everybody else, but Corey Davis is just flat out not doing it for anybody. Until he does it, you can't count on him. AJ Brown, like you mentioned, is going to take the top off the defenses. Derrick Henry is going to have people stack the box. Adam Humphries is a guy that Ryan Tannehill traditionally likes, a guy who can work the middle, a guy who can get open and move the chains for you. So I do like him. And as you mentioned, 2018 for Tampa Bay, he had over 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, 76 catches. That was with Mike Evans on one side, a healthy Deshaun Jackson on the other, and him rotating in and out with Chris Godwin before Chris Godwin became a perennial 90% of snap guy and took off. But I mean, that's very good. I can see him being the number 2 option on this team easily if Corey Davis falters again. And I don't think he's that bad of a guy to target, and especially in a PPR, because he could get peppered trying to move the chains.
Yeah, definitely not a FanDuel target, but I'll keep an eye on him for DraftKings for sure. Now, there's not much else in terms of depth for these wide receivers. Khalif Raymond is probably next up. He only had 9 receptions last year for 170 yards. He's had 3 years out of Holy Cross. Hasn't done too much yet, but he did catch a long touchdown pass against Baltimore in the playoffs. So he's got that deep speed. But I think he's on the outside looking in to start. And then I got to at least mention Cody Hollister from the Hollister family. But, that's the problem with this depth. He only had 2 catches last year on 6 snaps. So, last year kind of felt like the pass catchers for the Titans, it was just this mess of guys, because you also had Tajay Sharp in there, and you didn't really know what was happening with the tight ends. So I guess in that sense, we've got some more clarity. But yeah, for me, it's really A.J. Brown or Adam Humphries to start with, and that's about it.
Yeah, the depth on this team, maybe Raymond could take over if Corey Davis just falls on his face again. Then there is opportunity for deeper in this depth chart. But these aren't guys that I'm going to look at to start. I would look at Brown, Humphries if I need to, and then the tight ends aren't too bad.
Yeah, so tell me about the tight ends. We've got Delanie Walker, a 14-year veteran who's gone. They just cut him in March. Dealt with injury last year, ended up with only 21 catches, 215 yards. But Jonnu Smith is back, and he should really take advantage of this opportunity.
Yeah. First off, I love Delanie Walker. He was one of my favorite guys to play ever since he was in San Fran. Before he even became the starting tight end, I just loved the way he lit people up on special teams. And then he worked himself into that role behind Vernon Davis and then eventually took over that starting job. But he was always really good. But last year he got hurt. I think it was the first snap on week 7 or the first couple plays in week 7. He got hurt, and then Jonnu Smith took over. But Jonnu Smith's season average or season totals were 44 targets, 35 catches, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12.5 yards per reception, which is good. This guy's he's pretty much Derrick Henry's size, 6'3", he's 250. That's funny to say. But after week 7, before week 7, he didn't really play much. Every week, he was under 70% of snaps for all. After week 7, after Delanie got hurt, he never played a snap percentage under 72%. He became the number 1 option or number 1 tight end on the team. 6 of those 9 games, he had 4+ targets. Unfortunately, 2 of the other games, he had 0 targets. So you can see the floor with that. But he has chemistry with Tannehill, and I do like him as a GPP option. As we mentioned, this team doesn't really have that much depth at wide receiver. Corey Davis didn't do anything last year. He could easily put himself into the number 3 option on this team as a pass catcher. They did lose Dion Lewis as well. We both like Evans to fill that role, but we don't know yet. So I do see him being a GPP option at tight end, maybe not for points per reception, maybe more of a FanDuel target. But I think he's very talented, and he's a big physical guy and a red zone option.
Yeah, I agree. He could certainly be that third option. Um, and he's another guy. He scored in the playoffs. That was the thing for me, the takeaway where, in the playoffs, the pressure's on, and Tannehill really took advantage of his tight ends and used them to his advantage. He threw a touchdown to one of his tight ends in every game of the playoffs. In game one, it was Ferkser. In game two, it was Jonnu Smith. In game three, against Kansas City, it was Ferkser again. So I think this is an important duo to keep an eye on. And I agree. I'm a little concerned about the floor for Jonnu Smith, but based on his price tag, it's a lot easier for him to pay off value. So I will consider him. And then Ferkser, he only had 14 catches last year and 1 touchdown. But I mentioned the 2 touchdowns he had in the playoffs. And with Delaney Walker gone, I think he'll step up. And he's shown, when he's out there, the main purpose is, to find an opening in the seam. He's done well when he's gotten the opportunity. If Jonnu Smith is hurt, I would certainly look at Ferkser. I think the arrow is pointing up for these tight ends.
Yeah, especially with the losses that they had on offense. Tajay Sharp's not a huge name, but he was pretty productive last year. And Delaney Walker is now officially not on this team. So they both jump up one spot in the depth chart.
Excellent. Well, before we get into the draft coverage, Santino, where can everybody find you on Twitter and learn more about your 4.4 speed and 37-inch vertical?
Yeah, you could find me on Twitter at Santino Caccone. That's at SANTINO CACCONE.
And you can find me on Twitter at Language Olympic. And the rest of the crew is at DFSCoachTalk. Now, Santino, we've touched on a couple of these draft picks. Lineman in the first round, cornerback in the second round, Darrington Evans in the third round. Any other highlights we should know about, or any other points you want to make on the draft?
Yeah, and you also mentioned Cole McDonald, their seventh round rookie quarterback. They only had 2 other draft picks here. Larrell Murchison, a D tackle out of North Carolina State. He might have a role because Jarrell Casey is no longer on this team, and that's a big loss. But I don't know if again, with these rookies, especially a late round rookie, it's very hard for him to crack that starting lineup day one. I think he's more of a depth option. Same with Chris Jackson, more of a depth option. But the big one is Isaiah Wilson, their first round pick out of Georgia, offensive tackle. He's probably, if there's somebody going to start day one, it should be him, and it would be him. And he has some big shoes to fill. Jack Conklin is probably overall their biggest loss this year. A very talented tackle, and they lost both of their starting linemen on the right side. So he's going to be thrown right into the fire, and we'll see how that works for him. But yeah, they have some pretty good draft picks, and I know at least Evans, Fulton, and Wilson are going to have roles out of the gate. Maybe not starting roles, but roles.
Now, how about for the overall season outlook? We talked yesterday about Indianapolis and how we both feel very, very positive with their future this season. And I'm a little bit more skeptical on the Titans. I think if they stay healthy, they've got a chance to get in the playoffs again and be a force. But I just don't think they have much depth at any of these key positions. I'm not as optimistic with them overall. I don't think they made enough of a splash really defensively. In terms of personnel to make a big change. I don't know if Jim Haslett will be enough. So how about you? What do you think about the Titans just as an overall projection?
So losing Logan Ryan, your other starting cornerback. I know Adoree Jackson's not bad, and he's probably going to fill that role. But losing Logan Ryan and Jarrell Casey, those are 2 big guys on defense that you're missing out on. They weren't great at generating pressure. They were 13th in league in sacks last year, but they were towards the bottom in passing yards against. And losing Logan Ryan, a starting corner, is going to hit them a little bit. But I do like them, but the efficiency that they had last year was almost historic. It's very hard to be that efficient without with the weapons that they have and the full depth that they have, the lack of depth that they don't have. It's very hard to be that efficient 2 years in a row. So I do see a little bit of a decline. And I do, as I mentioned yesterday, I like the Colts to win this division. I think they could finish second, but Deshaun Watson's still the best quarterback in this division, and it's a quarterback-driven league. So maybe the Texans finish second, but I think they have an outside chance to make the wild card again, especially because Ryan Tannehill showed that he can lead this team to a really good record and really far.
Well, as we head into the weekend, we are going to wrap up our AFC South coverage here on DFS Coach Talk. It'll be Mike and Shane. Santino, you and I will have the day off tomorrow. Any big plans for the holiday weekend?
Not as of yet. I'm playing it by ear right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a different year this year, isn't it?
Yeah, a little different than normal.
Just a wee bit different. So I guess the one positive thing is, we're going to continue to crank out these podcasts 7 days a week. So for those who are gathered around some sort of barbecue, feel free to flip us on this weekend. As I mentioned, Mike and Shane will have the Texans on Saturday, and then we'll continue to transition through the AFC throughout the weekend and into next week. And I'm pretty excited. I've got family coming down tomorrow. It's my mom's birthday today, actually. So happy birthday, Mom! And we're gonna, do some social distancing this weekend. So that'll be fun. To everyone else out there, have a great, safe, healthy, fun weekend as much as you can. And thank you for all of your support here at DFS Coach Talk. We love connecting with you. So thank you again for your support. And be sure to tune in again tomorrow as Mike and Shane break down the Houston Texans for you here on DFS Coach Talk.